and welcome to the Riyal Deal, coming to you from the Al Arabiya English studios. This is your weekly bulletin bringing you all the latest business news headlines and analysis from Saudi Arabia. Coming up, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the United States expects to sign several major agreements during a visit to Washington by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The Saudi-based data center developer DataVolt announces that it is joining forces with the PIF-owned Artificial Intelligence company HUMAIN to develop multi-gigawatt data centers. We'll be speaking to DataVolt CEO Rajit Nanda in just a moment. As Saudi Arabia continues to advance its status as a global aviation hub, we ask the regional president of Airbus where he sees his company on that journey. And Saudi Arabia's first Tourism Summit brings in billions of riyals in new tourism projects as the kingdom pushes ahead with the goal of boosting tourism to 10% of GDP. Diving into our top story today, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is in Washington this week and will be holding talks with President Donald Trump at the White House. Well, ahead of his arrival, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the US is going to sign some good deals during the visit. However, Rubio did not give any details about those deals. And the White House has told Al Arabiya that a Saudi-American investment forum will be taking place in Washington on the 19th of November during that visit. Well, this visit and the investment forum are viewed as part of a broader push to advance cooperation between the two countries in key sectors such as energy, technology, infrastructure, finance and defense. Well, I'm joined this week by Ali Raza, who is the Chief Investment Officer of HUMAIN Company. Ali, a very warm welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us. Just tell us, first of all, what is the state of economic ties between Saudi Arabia and US and the United States, would you say?
Well, the economic ties between Saudi Arabia and the US are clearly deepening and broadening. I mean, we saw Mr. Trump make a historic visit to Saudi Arabia as the first international destination after coming into his second term earlier this year. And there were a number of very interesting and very exciting partnerships that were established then. And, what's happening is that the economic relationship is shifting from one of simply commodity and defense to a much broader relationship that involves industrials, technology, energy, healthcare, financial services. And both regions expect and understand that there is a critical need to establish closer trade relations between these two flourishing regions. One is, of course, a region which is filled with ambition and vision and has abundant resources. The other is more established and dominant, but there is a mutual benefit to both regions establishing these types of relationships. And I think the expression, several months after Donald Trump's visit, for His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to make the visit himself and to host an investment forum, it's a clear indication that all of the observations that we made earlier this year are now crystallizing and turning into tangible initiatives.
And Ali, I wanted to ask you to help us decode the comments made by the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He said lots of big deals are going to come out of this visit. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I mean, when such an official makes these comments, then it will always invite scrutiny or speculation. So we can speculate here. And, we've seen some evidence of where the interests lie for both regions, right? There's a clear interest in defense and security. And I imagine we would see more of this. The defense minister of Saudi Arabia was over in the US recently conducting discussions. But on the industrial front, we've seen a very eager intention and effort from both sides to develop relationships across tech, particularly, the hot topic right now, compute, semiconductors, cloud infrastructure. There were a lot of chips that were allowed earlier this year. I imagine we will see more relationships forming between some of the US technology champions in the compute space. And again, we can speculate on the names and what they may mean, but I imagine, this will continue to expand. And Rubio's comments, I think, are a catch-all statement or phrase which will encompass many of the sectors we've just spoken about. But if we are going to expect anything, I think we should at least see defense, energy, compute being top of that list.
Yeah, well, we're going to be speaking later in the program about data centers when we cross to the CEO of DataVolt as well. But I wanted to ask you just lastly before we move on. I mean, there's been these reports of an investment summit taking place in the United States on the 19th of November. What do we think that's about?
So the investment summit, of course, is an expansion of some of the collaborations that took place earlier this year. And, once again, Mr. Trump made the historic visit to Saudi Arabia, which was quite an incredible event. There were some incredible relationships established, some great investments and partnerships announced, a very large volume of partnerships announced in Saudi Arabia and across the Gulf. And, this investment summit, I think, will really be about crystallizing that. Earlier this year, we described Trump's visit as extending an olive branch. And I think this visit is now really the tree taking its roots.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Ali. Ali Reza, we'll be speaking to you again in just a moment. Let's get a quick look at some of the other stories from the week. Saudi Arabia's annual inflation rate rose to 2.2% in October this year. That's according to fresh official data. Month-on-month prices increased from 0.3% from September. Well, the latest data points to moderate price growth across a range of goods and services in the kingdom. The Saudi Minister of Investment, Khalid Al-Faleh, has led a high-level delegation for an official visit to India. The 50-member delegation, which included government officials and private sector leaders, sought to bolster economic cooperation and deepen investment partnerships between the two countries. Well, during the visit, the two parties signed a number of MOUs. Thai Airways has become the first global airline to line-fit Neo Space Group's Skywaves connectivity system. Well, the announcement, which was made in Riyadh, marks a major milestone for NSG, which is a PIF company, and it reinforces NSG's position as a leader in in-flight connectivity. Well, the system will be installed on the carrier's new Boeing 787 Dreamliners, bringing passengers broadband speeds of up to 200 megabits per second. And the Saudi fintech startup Lean Technologies says it's exploring new investments to expand its product offering ahead of a possible public listing. Although no official decision about timing has been announced. Well, Lean, which is backed by at least $100 million in disclosed venture funding, is seeing strong activity in remittances, cross-border payment flows, and alternative credit solutions. Now, the Saudi-based data center developer DataVolt has announced that it's joining forces with the PIF-owned artificial intelligence company HUMAIN to develop multi-gigawatt data centers. Well, these centers will power the next generation of AI infrastructure across the kingdom. Well, together, DataVolt and HUMAIN are aiming to drive Saudi Arabia's ambition to become a global hub for AI and intelligent computing built on innovation, scale, and sustainability. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by the CEO of DataVolt, Rajit Nanda, who joins us now from Riyadh. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Rajit. We also have Ali, who's still with us. We'll come to you in just a moment, Ali, but I just wanted to ask you first, Rajit. I mean, everyone's building, there's billions of dollars in CapEx being spent, but a lot of hype and concern about a bubble. What's your take? Are we in a bubble, or are we still underestimating demand?
So thank you for the question. It's a great question, which is doing the rounds these days. And what I would say is that there are good things about bubble, okay? And one of the good things about bubble is you end up seeing winners and losers. Now, my own view is that we definitely are at a very important point in the history of this AI transition, where we have a lot of companies who are just using AI prefix and AI suffixes and are claiming that they are AI companies, even if they have nothing to do with AI. So there is a moment in this AI transition journey where we need to separate the men from the boys. And I think there is going to be some amount of course correction. The good thing is, like all of these bubbles that we have seen in the past, there will emerge some clear winners and there will be some clear losers. And history, when we look back at it in 5 years from now and 10 years from now, we all will see that these winners are the ones who are leading in the whole AI front. look at what happened back in 2000 and 2001 during the dot-com bubble. There were a number of companies out there, and 99% of them collapsed. But then today we are dealing with multi-trillion companies, the Microsofts of the world, the Googles of the world, and of course Meta came a couple of years after that, but we still have all these wonderful companies from that dot-com era out there. So just like it happened back in 2000, we will end up having some winners and losers. In terms of just the financial metrics, what I do want also the viewers to understand is that back during the dot-com bubble days, or a number of other bubbles that we have seen, but okay, the best comparison is the tech dot-com bubble. And during that time, we saw a lot of companies that did not have revenues, and that, or the ones that existed with small revenues, they were trading at market multiples which were triple digit, 125, 150, 160. If you today go and look at many of the tech companies, and we know that today 15 big tech companies are pretty much providing 40%, 50% of the market cap of S&P 500, for example. And if you look into their multiples, they are still trading at levels of 30, levels of 40, levels of 45. So there is still a lot of sanity in the way the growth expectations from these companies are expected to play out in the coming years. And therefore, I do think that we will see a lot of clear winners in this whole AI bubble discussion and all the clean out that hopefully will happen over the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Sure, and you make a really good point there about drawing parallels with the survivors of that dot-com era. I'd like to talk a bit about your newly announced partnership with HUMAIN. Tell us a bit about that and link that, if you will, to what you were just telling us earlier on.
HUMAIN, as you know, is the Saudi national champion, the company that is going to be in the AI stack. Okay. And HUMAIN is looking at the length and breadth of the AI stack. Where we come in is to partner with HUMAIN in order to look at one specific area, which is the build out of the data centers. Now, remember that data centers are like the roads on which the fancy cars drive. Okay, the whole AI stack is going to lead to a lot of fancy cars out there, the different apps that all of us are using and getting enamored of. These are the fancy cars, think of them. But for that driving experience, we should not forget that we need to have great roads, and we need to have roads all across. So what DataVolt does is build those roads, and we let HUMAIN focus on the rest of the AI stack out there. So this partnership is really an infrastructure partnership in the whole AI stack, where we look to partner with them to build out the energy infrastructure, the DC infrastructure, and wherever it makes sense, also the compute infrastructure for them.
Ali, let me turn to you now, because you follow investment flows very closely, and I'm wondering whether you're seeing any signals that would suggest a bubble or something else.
I don't think we're in a data center bubble at all, Tom. The reality is that we're building infrastructure for industries of the future. And in a lot of cases, industries we haven't even seen yet. That's the reality, right? And, you know, infrastructure expansion always precedes economic expansion, always precedes industrial expansion. I mean, as Rajit was just saying, you know, we're building a lot of very beautiful cars, but they need roads to drive on, right? And this is much the same. And, you know, the reference, it's not the first time I've heard the reference or comparison to the dot-com bubble, but the dot-com bubble was much about software and applications. And even then, you know, we saw the likes of, I mean, some of the examples that Rajit shared, but, you know, Mark Andreessen, one of the most famous investors these days, who's undoubtedly funded so many industries and incredible ventures, came up with Netscape back then. I mean, he's just one example of so many incredible innovations that were born in that era, right? But when we are trying to make a reference to the dot-com boom, which a lot of people do, I think one of the things we have to be very conscious of is that applications are very different to infrastructure, right? And we're building infrastructure that is core to industries of the future now, much like rail was to many resources 100, 150 years ago. I mean, this is something we cannot look past. And actually, just a few short years ago, 2021, the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia had estimates that our requirement for capacity by 2030 would be around 1 gigawatt. And now, even the lowest conservative estimates, estimating around 3 gigawatts of capacity, anywhere up to 8 gigawatts on the more aggressive estimates. And this is, not just a case of building as much as possible, build it and they will come. I think this is, this sort of capacity is a reflection of what we need right now when we consider all of the incredible socio-economic transformation that's taking place. And once the new industries are born around this spine, what will become, I think, the spine of the industry, we can only imagine what the capacity requirement will be. So my view is, no, I think we have a long road ahead of us and much more to build.
Okay, Raja, let me turn back to you. Thanks for that, Ali. I mean, there is a fear, isn't there, that AI demand will outpace available power. And yet Saudi Arabia is saying we've got the power and we can export some of this power. Do you believe the world is underestimating demand for AI? And what role does the region's power surplus play in addressing it, do you think?
Look, we believe that Saudi has everything in it to emerge as the third force in the world of AI. Today, the world has two centers of gravities as far as AI is concerned. One is the US, other is the China. The million-dollar question in front of all of us is there room for other such center of gravities to emerge? I think we will see the democratization of AI. And in the process of the democratization of AI, as we go forward, there is room for a few other center of gravities for the whole AI enablement. And Saudi, in our view, is very well positioned to be one of the leading champions in terms of being at the center of gravity of enabling AI. But for it to happen, there are a number of things that we need to think about. First of all, what is it that Saudi is able to give in terms or able to offer in terms of attracting itself to be an AI champion of the world?
Okay.
We all know that the buzzword in the context of AI is energy. And Saudi, over the last years, has very well demonstrated that it is the lowest, most reliable, and the green part of the energy generation. All of this is happening with rapid strides in the Kingdom of Saudi. This is a country which today produces 20 gigawatts of green energy per annum, which is probably the third largest green energy produced in anywhere in the world after China and India. The cost at which it is produced is 15% or 20% of the cost at which on an average it is produced in the US. And it is about 60% of the cost at which it is produced in places like China and India. We all believe that China is the lowest cost producer of everything. I can tell you the Kingdom of Saudi is the lowest cost producer of green energy in the world today. So the availability, the reliability, the cost at which the green energy is being produced makes it a very important engine towards making the whole AI dream happen. The second important enabler in this context is connectivity. Thanks to the great vision of the Crown Prince, in the last 9 years, this country has built 17 subsea landing stations. that are coming to the kingdom. And in the next 1.5 years, these 17 landing stations are going up to 24. The beauty of these landing stations, subsea cables, is that compute power can leave after it is being produced. It can leave the kingdom and go to its destinations. Whether you need to send it to the 1.4 billion people in Africa, or whether you want to send it to the 350 million people in Europe, or whether you want to send it to the 450 million people in US, or for that matter, the 1.4 billion people in India, all of this is possible because of the vision to put the connectivity, especially through the subsea cables between the kingdom and the rest of the world. The third important aspect, in my view, is basically the whole manufacturing supply chain. The kingdom, in the last 9 years in particular, has been building. Look at the gigacities, look at all of the downstream petrochemical, look at all the entertainment parks and everything else that is being built in the kingdom. $40 to $80 billion of capex hard infrastructure is being built in this country for the last 9 years consistently. As a result of that, what has happened is this country has been able to build a very resilient and a very dependable supply chain for building out all of this infrastructure. So all of these three, when they come together, what happens is basically you are able to demonstrate to the world that you have the capability of delivering the lowest cost of compute. And therefore, the kingdom today stands from a geo-economics perspective in a very vantage position to be able to deliver compute power at speed, compute power at a cost that is very, very competitive.
Okay, Rajit, let me turn back to Ali, and this will have to be the last question because we're nearly out of time. But one of the things that you are pretty vocal about, Ali, I think it's fair to say, is the idea that energy-rich nations could really shape the AI century. I mean, do you think the world is ready for that shift?
Personally, no, I don't think the world is ready for that shift, Tom, but I don't think we will be waiting for the world's readiness because, for the last 2 or 3 decades, we ran on the Silicon Valley model. Innovation was weightless, right? It wasn't attached to geography. Whoever had the best engineering won the game. But that's changing now. Geography matters, resources matter, energy matters, land availability matters, sustainability matters. So, in the new age, I think there's going to be a real shift in who's driving the tech conversation. As Rajit just mentioned, I mean, the supply chain is incredibly important for this whole equation, right? But the geography matters. And, relating that back to, Saudi Arabia, it's a blessed nation because it is very strategically located and very geographically rich. So I think, other nations like so will have a real chance at playing at the highest level. And to use Rajit's words there, for Saudi Arabia to potentially become the third force, US, China, and perhaps Saudi Arabia in the very near future.
All right, Ali, thank you very much indeed for that. You've had the last word. Ali Reza, we'll come back to you later on in the program. But meanwhile, a very big thank you to Rajit Nanda, the CEO of DataVolt. Thank you both very much indeed for your time. Now, Saudi Arabia is continuing to advance its status as a global aviation hub. And in line with the Saudi aviation strategy, the kingdom aims to see passenger capacity rise to 330 million passengers per year and 4.5 million tons of cargo throughput by the year 2030. Well, Airbus is already a big part of that journey and has clocked up a series of major deals. Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Gabriel Semeras, who is the Airbus President, Africa and Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Let's just start by sort of really setting the scene for our viewers. If you could just tell us, what is Airbus's presence in this region and in particular in Saudi Arabia?
Well, absolutely. Airbus has been in the region for many decades, specifically in Saudi Arabia. We've been here for the last 25 years. Present in the 3 divisions of the company, as you know, commercial aircraft, defense and space, and also in helicopters. On the commercial aircraft, we obviously have more than 200 aircraft in operation with the main carriers, Flynas, with also Saudia, Riyal Deal, the low-cost carrier of Saudia. And as you probably saw, recently announced some orders with Riyal Deal, the new airline of the kingdom, connecting the world. So we are serving Riyal Deal as well, soon to deliver some A321s to them. And also we announced an order of 350s at the Paris Air Show, which will be coming very soon as well with the airline. Also with the leasing company from the PIF, Aviation, we announced a big order as well with some 350 freighters and also some single-aisle A320 aircraft. So absolutely devoted for that. Obviously the need, and that shows a bit the collaboration that we're doing with the Vision 2030, the need for aircraft in Saudi Arabia is growing. With this backlog, on top of the 200 aircraft in operation, we've got more than 450 aircraft to come just in Saudi Arabia. As you know, Saudi Arabia is attracting a lot of travel in the region, tourism, but also religious travel. In fact, 3 of the main routes, busiest routes in the world, according to IATA, are in Saudi Arabia. From Dubai to Riyadh, Riyadh Jeddah, and Jeddah Cairo, which is impressive. I mean, when you look at the ambition of 2030 of having 300 million passengers to come, they're already on the journey to that. So that's pretty impressive. Of course, we also have some activities with defense and space. The main one are the Eurofighter planes, which are obviously part of our consortium as well. We have a share in the Eurofighter consortium for those jets that are operated by the Air Force. The refueling aircraft will be called the MRTTs, which are to refuel the fighter jets, but also to carry transport troops, medical evacuation in international missions. There will be the biggest fleet with up to 10 aircraft coming in soon into the Air Force outside Europe. And of course, the military transport aircraft that we have, the C295s, which have been operating in the kingdom for quite some time. And on top of that, if you add all the helicopters activity, we have more than 100 helicopters from Airbus flying there, with companies also from the PIF, like the helicopter company, private operators, but also with the Air Force and other branches of the Ministry of Defense. So quite a big presence, more than 400 employees now in Saudi Arabia. And as I said, we've been there for over 25 years.
Wow, so all of that happening, and you mentioned Riyadh Air, and we've had Riyadh Air on this program. Clearly, you're seeking to capitalize on all of that momentum. We have heard some reports that sometimes it isn't possible for demand and supply to match perfectly. Is it going to be possible to deliver and match the demand with Airbus aircraft?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, there's a huge demand for aircraft. We've never seen such a backlog. We've got more than 8,500 aircraft in the backlog around the world. There is a plan to ramp up production. So, for example, on the single-aisle program, which is one of our most successful programs on the A320, we're planning to ramp up to 75 aircraft a month. That is impressive, as you see. 75 aircraft in 2027. We've recently announced the opening of 2 new assembly lines, one in the US, in Mobile, Alabama, and one in China as well, which adds up to 10 assembly lines. Wide bodies as well on the 350 program. Currently doing a rate of 6 a month. Our plan is to ramp up to 12, so that's doubling the production of the aircraft by 2028. Similarly, on the A330, a bit more of a shy production in that sense, but still 4 aircraft a month, and in 2027 we'll be going up to 5 aircraft a month. So that's the plan. Of course, we see there is a growing demand, and we are ramping up, obviously together with our supply chain, to make sure that we can deliver to that demand.
Well, it sounds like you're firing on all cylinders at the moment. In terms of manufacturing, you mentioned various plants around the world. Any ideas that perhaps in the future you could perhaps do some manufacturing in this region?
Well, there's obviously plans in place. We look at the whole supply chain and the whole ecosystem. As you know, the aerospace industry is a highly regulated industry, so we need those suppliers to be at the real standards. Everything has to be certified according to certain standards, EASA, FAA. And we need those suppliers to deliver to quality, deliver to time, and to be able to match those needs on the production. We've done a scoping of the whole supply chain and the whole supply chain ecosystem in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You probably saw recently as well some announcements around qualifying local companies for the sourcing of titanium and aluminium. So there are partnerships we're building upon. Another good example is the partnership we have with SAMI, which is part of the PIF group as well, to do all the MRO activities for the military assets that we have in the kingdom. So indeed, there is a capacity, and we're constantly exploring the opportunities that we have in the kingdom with local supply chain.
And when it comes to sourcing talent locally, I know you've expanded quite significantly. We do sometimes hear from people that we talk to that finding the right people isn't always easy, given that the market is undergoing so much growth. Are you finding you're having to import talent, or are you finding the local talent you need?
I mean, if we look at the global market forecast for the next 20 years, we have a huge need for new aircraft. And as a consequence with that, we obviously need the people to operate those aircraft, to service those aircraft, and also even at the cabin crew to operate those aircraft. So yes, there is a huge need just in the region. We estimate the need of around 265,000 additional people. So clearly having those people properly trained is a must for us to be able to deliver in our commitments. So as Airbus, we are providing long-term partnerships. We are about transferring as well know-how so that we can develop the local ecosystems. And we're cooperating with a lot of these local stakeholders, universities, educational partners, training schools as well, to gear up all the workforce in order to be able to deliver those aircraft and the ecosystem to be ready when it has to be. So yes, human capital as part also of the Vision 2030, key aspect of the angle, and also a key aspect of our strategy in the kingdom to provide those needs in the country.
Okay, just talk us through your medium to long-term plans in this particular region.
So medium to long term, we look at commercial aviation. I said that there is a huge need. The global market forecast indicates there is a need of around 3,750 aircraft that are required in this region in order to cater for that growth. And it's impressive because when you look at other parts of the world and the split between single aisle and wide body, it's in the Middle East. You see there is a 43% need on wide body aircraft. I mean, you've probably flown on routes from Dubai to Riyadh where you're operating an A380 aircraft for a 1.5-hour route. You don't see that in other parts of the world. And the planes are full. We have also with Saudi the high density A330 aircraft, which carries up to 300 passengers, also on the same route. I mean, it's impressive, that growth. And we see it continuing to grow. And the establishment and obviously the growing middle class not just in Saudi Arabia, but also in the Middle East, we see it growing above the GDPs. So obviously people have a need to travel, connecting families, connecting businesses, also transporting cargo, which is very important. So clearly there is a growing need, and we are there to support the airlines and to support the economies in that path of growth.
Indeed. I mean, I've been on an A380 very recently between Dubai and Riyadh. It was full. I mean, there will be people who are wondering why not produce more A380s, given that those planes are all operating at maximum capacity, as far as I can see.
Yeah, indeed. So the A380 is a fantastic product, as you say. In the UAE, we have Emirates, obviously operating the biggest fleet of A380s. But of course, we're looking also at innovation, new products. A350 is our latest generation aircraft. It's got brand new engines developed by Rolls-Royce, which are 20 to 25% more efficient than oldest generation engines. As well as 70% of the aircraft is advanced materials. So the A350 is the new standard, these new technologies, and it's also a fantastic experience. So if you have the chance of flying on an A350, you'll see the high quality of the product and the cabin that we can offer and the airlines can offer in such type of products.
In terms of making air travel more ecologically friendly, what sort of innovations are there at Airbus in order to meet that goal?
Well, I mean, obviously one of the biggest innovations is the development of those new products like the A350 that I was mentioning. Just providing that 20 to 25% more fuel efficient means obviously less CO2 emissions, which is already in that journey of what we call the net zero to 2050. Saudi Arabia, for example, is in that journey of renewing the fleets. They probably have one of the lowest average age of fleets around the world, which is already going in that direction of reducing the CO2 emissions. The second pillar that we have, where we are also advising and supporting airlines and also local producers in the ecosystem, are sustainable aviation fuels. We see this as the most immediate way of reducing, in addition to the renewal of the fleets. Clearly, the challenge that we have is the price of SAF and the availability of SAF around the world. But we believe it's clearly our aircraft, we are investing in them being able to operate on a 50% blend of SAF. By 2030, they'll be able to operate on 100% SAF. But of course, we need to develop that ecosystem. We're doing a lot of work with the Civil Aviation Authority in Saudi, who is a great promoter of SAF. And we want to support the ecosystem in developing that so that then we can continue on the net zero journey of 2050.
Okay, well, it's all we have time for, unfortunately, but it's been a real pleasure talking to you and finding out about Airbus in this region. Gabriel Simelas, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks to you, Tom. Thank you very much.
And finally, we often talk about Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 and the goal of attracting 150 million visitors to the kingdom each year. Well, it's also hoped that by the end of the decade, tourism will represent about 10% of Saudi GDP. Well, the very first Tourism Summit was held last week from the 11th to the 13th of November. The three-day event brought together nearly 8,000 delegates and some 140 speakers from right across the global tourism industry. Well, Saudi Arabia's Tourism Development Fund, the TDF, unveiled 2.9 billion Saudi riyals worth of new tourism projects and strategic partnerships during the course of the Tourism Forum. That translates into about $773 million worth of projects. Well, I'm joined still by Ali Reza, the Chief Investment Officer of HUMAIN & Company. Ali, thanks for standing by. Just wondering, what struck you about the Tourism Forum and what emerged from it?
Well, Tom, I think one of the most interesting things about the Tourism Forum was that it was, not just another tourism event. We've seen many of those. It was a forum to conduct a discussion on a truly integrated economic ecosystem. And, it's not just the discussion around the ecosystem, but it was also, I think, it brought something which is very common of many of the economic agendas in Saudi Arabia, in that the conversation was global in nature, right? And I've heard this from a number of the sovereign entities in the past, various professionals and executives that work there. I've often heard the phrase, or some version of it, sovereign by design, but global in vision. We saw the forming of the World Economic Forum partnership to really transform tourism globally, bring sustainability and digital transformation to tourism across the globe. So there were some incredible investments, like many other events, secured in towards Saudi Arabia, but it really was a global conversation. I think that was the most interesting aspect of this.
Stay with us, Ali, because we're going to stick with the topic of tourism. And earlier on in the week, I spoke to one of the most iconic names in luxury hospitality, Sir Rocco Forte, who is the president of Rocco Forte Hotels. And in December 2023, Rocco Forte Hotels entered a landmark partnership with the PIF, which acquired 49% stake. So Rocco is now eyeing locations in Saudi Arabia for future properties, including on the Red Sea. Here's what he told us in an exclusive interview.
Obviously, with a deal with PIF, it makes sense for us to come into this part of the world. And obviously, there are a lot of developments taking place in Saudi Arabia. And we're looking, and we're close to a deal on one of them on the Red Sea, a hotel which has been developed in the Red Sea. And obviously, you were talking earlier about tourism development. I mean, they really hit it in a big way. And they're building a huge number of hotels in a lot of different destinations with a view to becoming, an international tourist destination.
Okay, so Rocco Forte speaking to me earlier on this week. He's, of course, the president of Rocco Forte Hotels. And, clearly there is this big push, isn't there, Ali, to grow and diversify Saudi Arabia's tourism landscape. I mean, do you think we're going to see more international chains entering the fray?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a very comprehensive strategy across the region, right? Saudi Arabia, perhaps to the unfamiliar eye, may seem like a big desert location, but when we look deeper into it, you'll see that there's the incredible history in places like Alula. There are projects like the Red Sea project along the coast, the Abha region. We spoke earlier this year, Tom, about the Festival of Roses. I mean, the list goes on, right? There are so many really incredible sites and landscapes, and matching efforts underway to develop these into rich tourism destinations. It's quite a diversified ecosystem, or at least one that's developing. Now, in terms of the brands, of course, I mean, almost every major hotel chain has announced, some of them up to 50, 60 new hotels across the kingdom. And Roquefort, of course, is a legacy name, adding another one to the list, and one that PIF has a very deep interest in. But I expect that this list is going to continue to grow at record pace. I mean, even within central Riyadh, we can clearly see you spend a few days there, that there is a need now for additional sites and hotels. And there are beautiful sites that have opened up, like the ones in Via Riyadh. There's a St. Regis hotel that's opened just above. I mean, there are brands that are already in Kingdom that have announced large swaths of sites across the Kingdom, but there are many more coming in as time progresses. And I don't expect this will slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, that all chimes in with what Jerry and Cirillo was telling us earlier in the year as well at Diriyah Gate. Well, thank you very much indeed. We're going to have to leave it there. Ali Reza, Chief Investment Officer of Haytham & Company, thank you very much indeed for your time today. That is all we have time for. Thank you very much indeed for watching The Riyal Deal here on Al Arabiya English. Look forward to seeing you again next week.